If you're ever at a crossroads and unsure of which direction to take, my advice is very simple. Follow the path with the most expansion. That's it. Episode's done. We're gonna call it a wrap. Just kidding. But what if you don't know which path is actually going to lead to the same or more expansion that you are desiring? And this could be in terms of finances, if you're comparing job opportunities or career changes. It could also be in love. It could be in expansion of the self-expression, in skills that you are acquiring. Expansion is kind of like abundance. It takes many, many different forms. But essentially, your highest path, this is a personal belief. You don't have to subscribe to my philosophy, but my belief is that the highest path that the soul is ultimately going to benefit the most from is one of continuous expansion and growth, pushing oneself beyond the former limits and constraints of thinking, of belief systems, of physicality, of expressions of love, of money, of intelligence, of value that is gained in some way. That is ultimately what we are here to do on Earth School. And we want to be pushing the edge of the envelope. And there are some opportunities that look great on paper, but actually just recapitulate the same underlying patterns and dynamics. And maybe there appears to be a little bit of expansion, but when you get there, you realize that it's actually a golden gilded cage or an invisible prison that binds you at the edges and the seams of the construct of your personality and consciousness that wants to be expressed at the highest frequency and resonance that it possibly can in this particular embodiment at this particular point in space and time. And one of the best ways to sense out the course of expansion is to meditate on it, to lean in to the quantum field, the arrangements of different lifelines and particles buzzing around you, yearning to be tickled and touched with your curiosity, and ask your higher self, your guides, your spiritual entourage team, the Akashic records, whatever your modality is, your tool, that is what I would go to first. For me, I like to imagine that I'm in a particular place or an environment or around a person or a job, whatever it is. And I use the visualization skills that I would for manifestation. But instead of projecting it outwards and creating, I actually receive. I go into the visualization practice, but I ping and I get a call back. And it's like this little energy that I can feel the state of presence there. Sometimes I will even have a vision of myself in that timeline beckoning me or saying, no, not yet. Although this is a rather new development of this particular skill, and I haven't always had it. But what I can rely on definitively, consistently, because I don't know how consistent this new development is at this moment, but the energy sensing and merging with my consciousness in that lifeline, even if it's just for half a second, and feeling the environment, feeling almost like this gentle touch, as though I am porting a part of myself to that future point. And inquiring, is this a good fit for me? You can do this and adapt it as it makes sense. You can also do it as you are falling asleep. Your brainwave activity slips out of beta. If you're not an experienced meditator, this is a great adaptation. Right as your brain waves are starting to really slow down rhythmically, coherently, shift into a different gear, you can access different memories and subconscious elements to understand what your true feelings are. And you can practice this, imagining what it's like on the other side of that dream or that crossroads that you have. And at first you might wander a bit, but you should start to get a feeling, a sense of connecting with that place, that experience beyond. And after repetitions, you can start to get a feeling that is even stronger and even more consistent, that'll lead you to a gut reaction. Yes or no, or maybe, or not right now. And you might even receive downloads in your dreams, indications of whether or not that particular timeline is in alignment with your highest interest. And if you ever have feelings of dread, listen to those. It's very, very important, because intuition is one of those sense organisms and mechanisms that happens under our conscious awareness and often through our body first. And it takes a moment for us to consciously process and to recognize and listen to. But I also believe that the intuitive system happens to be connected with some of these faculties that exist beyond our ordinary reality. And I can't defend it, and I can't really substantiate it with anything like evidence. It's just, let's say, an intuition that there's something about the subconscious system that has its own GPS unit that I find to be rather accurate, as most people do. And when you start to expand those abilities and tap into querying other timelines, what you'll find is that indeed the intuitive system can be expanded to garner information about the quantum multiverse that the little sliver that you happen to be interested in. And so whenever you have a gut feeling, listen, because it's very often, in my personal opinion, an intelligence that is linked into the broader perspective in some mysterious way that I can't scientifically validate or explain, that will guide you, and it will guide you effectively. And it's often the first line defense, but it is our conscious mind that tries to rationalize and overwrite things and to say, no, it looks so good on paper. Their profile looks so good. They look just perfect for this position. And then disaster strikes. So be mindful of the power of discernment. Another interesting technique that was taught to me was using the body as a pendulum. And this is another one that I find fascinating from a scientist's perspective, because I don't know how to explain it. But it works if you are connected with your body, and not everybody is. I believe that this is actually a skill that has to be honed and practiced. And you need to have some mind-body connection that is relatively strong, even if you're just starting out. So if you are into mindfulness or meditation, or if you are very, very sensitive with your eating habits and your consumption of physical things, then you will do very good. If you heal yourself, if you work happily, harmoniously, and in tandem with your body, meaning you're not fighting it, you're not pushing it to the edge and the extreme and get back into the gym even though everything hurts. That type of militant, semi-sadistic perspective. I know you're sick, you're gonna get out there anyway, no rest for you. Like there is a certain mentality that some people have, I used to have, which is why I can speak to it, where they don't have a harmonious relationship with their bodies. And as a result, they don't tune in to the subtle forms of intelligence. And they try to, like a dictator, override the request and the pleas of the body for things like rest and healing and certain diet modifications, or saying no to some substances or vitamins and yes to others. So as a result, if you're not in tune with your body, this part is not for you. You can try it, but I wouldn't recommend it. And this is imagining the place of interest, looking at photos of it, pulling it up on a map or the decision of interest. It doesn't have to be a place. I've used it for places, and so that's why my mind defaults to that, but it's applicable to whether or not you should be vegan anymore, or whether or not you should try a certain experiment, and whether or not you're interested in a person, whether or not you're compatible with them. Your body will reject people often before your mind knows it. And this is why people often have a physical declining interest in those that they are breaking up with, because the body knows. And this is also why people have certain standards for if they're on a date and there's kissing incompatibility, then they know that right from the get-go that it's not going to work. And so there are many, many clues. And so essentially you have your question and you ask your body, and you close your eyes and you go within if it is a good idea to pursue. And then you stand in a neutral position with your feet shoulder width apart, your knees relaxed, and you let your body lean forward if it's a yes, and backwards if it's a no. That's how I was taught. I'm sure you could probably remap the directions, but you want to keep it consistent because it is like a skill that you need to hone and practice. And so what you can do is you can literally ask very minute things about your day. Do you want this snack? And then test it out. And then test it out on something that you know you don't want. So you have a baseline. And then when you have confidence with that you can actually query and receive a legitimate answer that's not going to confuse you, then you can ask about your crossroads decision. And similarly, if you have the gift of clairsentience, then you can use the energy sensing mechanisms on your palms and feel your way through. So I remember the story of Vishen from Mind Valley, who got his start out of poverty into wealth by literally in a sales job. I believe it was sales. where he had to look through a phone book and call people and cold call people. And he didn't know where to start. But he had emerging clairsentience at the time. So he went down the phone book and let his hand and his intuition guide him on who to call. And he killed his goals. He did so well, like improbably, and it was repeatable over and over and over again. So this is why some people turn to tarot cards, because they can feel the cards and they can feel the messages that are coming through. You can also write on paper whatever your decision is and use your hands to actually pick out the right answer. And it's helpful to have clarity. So to write things like yes or no, or instead of just maybe, because that's not going to help you very much, write something like optimal timeline still setting. Something like that, where it's like, it's a maybe, but it's a maybe that gives you insight into the why you need to wait for a moment. And that will help your mindset process some of the feelings around postponing or going in a certain direction that may not logically make sense to you. And so when you follow the path of the most expansion, what you do is you ensure that you're setting yourself up for the best possible outcome, because you guarantee that no matter what happens, and there might be some really interesting twists and turns in there, but no matter what happens, you are going to walk away in a better position than you entered into that portal of reality through that decision. You are going to be walking away with more, whatever that more is. And it's not always about more, but with the expansion that steps you further along your path of evolution. Versus if we just pick by the mind, we pick by what looks good on paper or by our emotions, and we don't necessarily prioritize expansion, we can end up in places that seem good for us, but are actually not going to let us grow and evolve as quickly as our soul might want to do. And everybody has their own timing. So trust your timing. I like to expand, and I like to expand as fast as humanly possible. And it drives me. It literally drives me, but you may not want to be at that pace. Stability might be your preferred value. And so instead of expansion, you could insert whatever your value is, if it's stability, predictability, and repeatability. And by understanding what is the most important thing to you, you can frame all of your decisions around that. Instead of going to the pros and the cons and working with the mind only, you can actually take the value that most strongly resonates with you for this chapter of your life and strap every decision to that metric to gauge if it is right for you. And then when you apply these exercises with that filtering value mechanism, what you will find is that your soul, your body, your intuition, your spiritual guidance team will lead you in the right direction every single time. But then it is up to you with your free will to take that information and to apply it to the decision that is going to lead to the most optimal timeline for you. And this is where shadow work becomes your friend. If you find that you're not choosing those paths that are actually in alignment with your highest interest and with all of the go signals of your intuition, your body, your guidance team, your mind, if there's something that's holding you back, that is worth an exploration through shadow work. Because it might mean that there are some self-reflection exercises that would benefit you to understand your decision-making matrix a little bit more. Especially if you choose something that is in direct opposition with your value system and where the universe is trying to lead you. Some people do that. And that usually points to a karmic lesson, but not always. When you value and when you are clear about what that value is, it makes it much easier to decide and to filter out the signal from the noise.